Hey software, it's your last task of the week. There is no starter code, so just open up a blank editor and give it a good name. So we are right now on 2.0.2, nested for loops. So renaming this 2.0.2 nested for loops might be a great idea so that you know exactly where your notes are when you need to look back. Now remember that once you have renamed, you do need to go to File Save to make sure this sticks in your account, and let's go from there. Make sure that you have your window set up so you can see what I am coding and you can see your own work at the same time. And remember that you can pause, rewatch, slow down whenever you need to. So we are going to start in the draw function and we are going to figure out what it means to nest for loops. So to do this, we are going to make one pretty basic for loop. We'll stick an ellipse in it and then we're going to figure out what nesting means. So let's start with our for loop. We're going to start with the word for, our parentheses, and then our curly braces. And inside those parentheses, we're going to declare a variable. To make things easy, I'm going to name our variables smartly. We're not going back to the skunk variable. I'm going to have a variable called x. I'm going to say that x needs to be less than 400. And I'm also going to say that x is going to increase by 50 every time. So x plus equals 50. And then inside of that for loop, I'm going to give myself a little space. I'm going to put an ellipse, and I'm going to have the x value control the x position. Life is so easy. I'm going to have the y value at 0. It's going to make sense in a minute. And I'm going to make the size 25. And I'm going to go ahead and hit play. So now I see I have like this little row at the top. If I made x less than or equal to 40, you'll see that I get an extra bonus circle on the side. Things are feeling pretty good. So now we need to figure out what it means to nest a for loop. And for like nesting things, I like to think back to like Russian nesting dolls. If you've never seen these before, if you don't know what they are, please take a second, open a new tab, just Google Russian nesting dolls. But they're those like wooden dolls that start out kind of big, and as you open them, they get smaller and smaller and smaller. There's just a little baby doll inside. So when we are nesting things in our code, it really just means that we are putting something inside of something else. And the useful reason why we do this is because right now, this x variable that we've made, it only really lives inside this for loop. I could not say use this x variable to control the background or control like another shape that I drew outside of the loop. It has to be used in the loop. But if I decide to nest my variables, I can make some interesting things happen. So inside of this first for loop that I wrote, so between the curly brace where it starts and ends and right above my ellipse, I'm going to start a second for loop. I'm going to go ahead and write the word for, I'm going to put in my parentheses, and now the only real catch is I'm going to start my curly brace here, but I'm going to end it after my ellipse. So I have an ellipse inside of this for loop, and I can even hit tab to indent it under. Now in the second for loop, I need to use a brand new variable. I cannot reuse the same name. And for this one, I'm going to make it control the y position. So I'm going to say that y also equals 0. Y is less than or equal to 400. It's going to look very similar. And y is going to increment by 50 every time. Now I need to use this y variable. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it in place of the 0. And I'm going to hit play. And this is the result I'm going to get. I now have a screen full of circles. And the reason why I have this is because for every x value, it is drawing a circle. But because this second for loop is inside the first, what that means is every time I get to a new x value, it's going to draw the row of y's. So for every value of x starting at 0, it's going to draw a bunch of new y's going down my page. Then once it gets down the page, it's going to reset the x, go back up to the top, draw another row down, and then reset, go back to the top, draw another row down until one or both of these limits is met. Then it will stop drawing. This is the very, very most basic thing for nested for loops. You guys can obviously adjust all these numbers. This is not something that needs to take up my whole page. I could make just a little section, have a grid. I could adjust where they start and stop so that I have different little components. And you guys are welcome to play and adjust. I could make it so that they're not adding evenly, so that now I have more left and right and less up and down. I could also adjust those values if I wanted to. Like, there's so many things that we can adjust and change here to make what we want. as there is with any for loop. I could also add other shapes here that are still going to be controlled by the X and Y, or even things like stroke, fill, stroke weight that you guys saw in the last lesson. For today, we're just going to practice making something nested. So this is the extent of what we're doing. You're going to head back to your work and answer some questions. Next week, we're going to unleash our full creative potential by combining everything we learned this week into a little baby mini project. I'll see you there, guys.